All right, we live?
Yes, sir.
All right, guys, welcome to episode 6.
Episode 6
of the Konquer podcast. Once again, my name is Chad Kratz, and this is Mr. Jeff Brandt. We are joined today by Mr. Brandon Chaison. Mr. Brandon Chaison is here with QC Iron, a very good friend of mine. That's my brother from another mother. Don't say we don't look alike, because we do. Shut up. But Brandon.
One of y'all got the looks. It's not you.
And it's not me. I got this shit into this. It's like reverse twins. But Brandon, so we've known each other for quite some time now. You've been kind of killing the bodybuilding game. And I wanted to bring you on to just kind of talk about what you do, man. Like, how do you approach bodybuilding? So first up, man, I'd like for you to just kind of introduce yourself. What's your background? Kind of a background of your pro bodybuilding as well.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me, brother.
No, absolutely, man.
Yeah. So I've been in, I guess, the fitness industry and training for almost 2 decades now. I'm looking back at it. Engineer by background, by trade, so I'm very analytical and very data driven. I do carry that into the fitness realm as much as I can. Been bodybuilding, I'm pushing that for about a decade now, but seriously into it for about 8 years. Had a couple off seasons, just had another off season, coming back into it. Pro classic physique, done bodybuilding, those 2 divisions as well. I coach. I've done a lot of general population and other athletes. Primarily, I do focus in around the athletic realm, especially in regards to bodybuilding. My background with bodybuilding, I won't try to do it in a clout way, but been blessed to have a lot of shows that I've had under my belt that I've won, taken quite a few overalls as
Do you
a
want
pro.
to mic drop this real quick?
No, I'm not doing that. No, but it's the one thing I will. And I know we'll get there, but that's the one thing that is the sport of bodybuilding. We say this cliche phrase: it takes time.
Yes.
It takes time to get there. You have these genetic freaks that can, do some things within the first couple of years, but we call it bodybuilding for a reason. It's not body maintaining. It's not a diet competition. It's bodybuilding. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah.
And I would even argue, in a way, I mean, realistically, we all are bodybuilders to an extent. Maybe not professionally. I don't want to take anything away from what you do. But I think, if people had that mentality that I am trying to build my body, they would approach weightlifting in an entirely different fashion, I think.
Yeah, and it's funny that I get approached with questions like that of like, well, hey, I want to do this, and this, and a lot of times I typically will tell people that are not in the bodybuilding realm of like, there's not that extreme of a difference foundationally or baseline wise of progressing your body from a general population to a bodybuilder.
Absolutely.
There are fine-tuned details as you get deeper into that. People specialize in areas, right? And you got to be detail focused on the individual. But from the grand scheme of things, understanding your nutrition, understanding intensity in the gym, how your body moves in space. Yeah. Understanding your stress levels, sleep. What you're putting in your body, recovery.
Yeah.
I was mentioning bodybuilding, but that's general population.
General
right?
population. That's
Thing,
literally the whole thing.
That's very refreshing to hear that coming from you, because it's kind of been the same message that we've had over the first, 5 episodes. And one thing that we've talked about, and I've had a complete shift in my mentality, right? Like not to take away from Brandon, but I used to want to push as much weight as possible. And since this latest surgery, it's like, I just want to be able to do this for as long as possible. Yeah. So you just stated that you've been working out for 20 years, right? And that you've been taking bodybuilding seriously for the last 8 years. You've been doing it for 10 years. So that touches on a lot of longevity that we talk about.
Yeah.
So how do you approach that with the longevity aspect in mind? Because you've been doing this, and not calling you old, right? But you've been doing this for a long time. So how are you still able to do it at this level?
Cameraman, let's go ahead and zoom in on the grays. Can we?
No.
No.
They haven't got here yet.
I cut mine off. So.
No, it's a very good question. Actually, I've had a couple of discussions with some of my competitors on this, and here's the one thing I will take back from myself is because throughout the years of me continuously educating myself, getting more knowledge, and growing in this space, especially around bodybuilding specifically, I've had to learn to adapt and also go through relevance as the years go on, and we learn new things, new data, new this, new that. There's this big old school bodybuilding mentality that's still lingering out there that are putting a lot of people in harm's way. And I've had some folks, and even some that I thought, were kind of mentors in the game that, I look back and I'm like, that might not have been the best way to do that. But that might have been the only way we knew in bodybuilding. So I've been about, at least our motto is we want healthy people, then a healthy athlete, then an optimal athlete, and in that order.
Okay.
So you can't be an optimal athlete if you're not a healthy person to begin with. I need you to be healthy. So whenever there's, for me personally, whenever I have an issue or an impingement or injury or stress or life is just hitting me, I got to go back to being ground zero healthy person, and then I can continue to progress. Also, it really is fundamentally about doing the little things, not necessarily just beating my body up every single day. I got to do my mobility. I got to be meticulous with my recovery. I got to understand how my sleep is working. I got to move too to help me with my recovery on top of that, not just my weight loss if that's or body compositional shift. And especially when you are in an intense, athletic realm, whether it be football players or bodybuilders or powerlifters,
Barely softball.
Even that, you have to be really cognizant of what you should push through and what you shouldn't. Everybody's body has an intensity threshold.
Absolutely.
And I used to be, I will crush it and I will walk out crippled from the gym.
Yeah.
That's just how I used to be. And I've actually seen more growth and more abilities out of me, especially even in bodybuilding, when I took that step back.
Leaving 2 reps in the tank.
And folk, not always going to failure. You want to get close, if you're really pushing for that hypertrophy, but at the same time, allowing your body to not be overloaded and overstressed in your CNS and all this stuff, and having the ability to say, okay, I can go back and hit this same lift 3-4 days from now with the same amount of intensity because every rep matters.
Yeah.
But my mindset back to that point is I'm looking at my lifts, I'm looking at my mobility, I'm looking at my body, and I'm also looking at my foods because my foods have to be sustainable. I shouldn't be going off the end and putting all this and doing this and drastic changes and all that stuff. I don't believe in that, especially now. Because also what I've told people is that if I can't be healthy and sustain myself in bodybuilding, I won't do bodybuilding. I just won't. And I tell that to even the folks that I coach. I was just like, if it's not sustainable or we're not still looking past your goals of just the stage and looking at the longevity of you, I don't want you to be 10, 20, 30 years from now and you've done competing and you're like, man, that was good, but I feel like Ronnie Coleman. No offense to Ronnie Coleman. He's
lightweight.
He's the GOAT. Mm-hmm. I like it. I love it. I know there's a lot of things going on, but we always have that fear of like, we don't want to be that 60, 70, 80-year-old on the couch dependent on a bunch of other people.
No.
And I can't.
You still have a life to live. You still
have a life. I have
family,
kids.
I have so many questions. Like this is, and you and I have had this conversation. This is just so refreshing because we live in a world of social media where everybody can be a C-bum, right? Like you can take enough of gear or whatever it is, and everybody can get to that point. And And Chad knows this most about me. Like, when I look in the mirror, I see a guy that still weighs 410 pounds, not 250, right? And so it's very refreshing to hear someone, and, you know, I'm going to talk you up a little bit, that's really at the top of their game, right? Yeah, you took last season off, but I mean, I follow your Instagram, we're friends on Facebook, I see what you're doing, right? And like, I'm like, damn, you know, and Chad and I talk about you, and you know, most of
shit all the time.
Most of it's good.
Oh wait,
for
what are we
me.
talking about?
Most of it's good for me. I can't talk about Chad, right? But like, it's just, you know, we could sit here and talk for hours and just pick your brain, especially for my aspect, because that's what I do to him every time I'm in here lifting, right? So it's just refreshing to see someone who's real, and it's not just that social media world where it's like,
no, absolutely,
you got to take this, you got to do that. I'm going to put you on this meal plan. You're going to do this, you know, 6 days a week, and it's just very refreshing.
Yeah, and I think it's the structure. I think it's the structure, and you would agree with me probably on this. It's a very structured system in general for your health, right? As a baseline, you talked about hitting your recovery the right way, hitting your, you know, auxiliary lifts or stretches the right way, and I think that speaks volumes. And I mean, and I can attest to this. At my bachelor party, you were counting macros at the dinner table, like, why we go, like, we gonna party tonight, man. What Brandon over there doing? Man, the chicken is like, if I do that, that's like 13.
Okay, all right,
Brandon, you gonna get something to drink? Yeah. Hold on, though. I'm gonna just a bourbon and
he says this though, but then he's like, dude, Brandon turned me on to my protein shake with my cereal.
Oh, bro,
man,
I don't know. That was a life-changing thing.
Before I go back into what I was finishing my statement on, so we took a trip to Houston for my, my guy Dub's 40th birthday, and we walked to this gas station, and bro, when I tell you, this is like a straight up fucking Houston, Texas gas station. There's tall tees and ball caps in this joint. And my man grabs a bowl thing of cereal, one serving, and a protein shake. And I said, man, you're not going to get no milk? He said, what you mean? This is the milk. I said, wait, what? Man, let me get some. I grabbed me one. And we're sitting, everybody else trying to go grab tacos and stuff. And me and this fool over here with a protein shake and cereal. And I'm like, this is the most amazing thing that's ever happened to life.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
But I think that goes back to the structure thing. Like, you're very, and I've seen you in season, out of season, meticulous. And, you know, what differs from me from both of you gentlemen is you guys both have 3 children, let alone 3 daughters, wives, and lives that you have to deal with outside of what your physical aspect of everything is. So I think, you know, that speaks volumes, because obviously bodybuilding takes that structure to the next upper echelon level. You know, you've got to be dialed in at some point, because when you go on stage, and me and you have had conversations where you've been so dialed in, you cramped up on stage, right? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, you have been in natural division since the beginning. So, I mean, tested through and through,
random tests,
all day long.
I've done natural and unnatural, but I mean, I've done well in both. But yeah, I've been pretty much the natural side of things since start. I've never put anything in my body.
So how have you seen the shift in bodybuilding? Because obviously, me and Jeff here, we're not in the back door of these shows where you're seeing all these dudes. I mean, and I've seen some of your after shots of the show, and without you telling me who won, I was like, that mother right there, that dude, he looked like he ate weights to get here. That dude's crazy.
Yeah.
So what have you seen behind the scenes change, and let's say just maybe over the last few seasons?
Man, so that's, man, that would take a whole nother podcast, because that.
Well, let's summarize, and then next time we will give you a follow up to this, because I like this.
That's what's been crazy. So if you go back to, and I'm gonna try to be as brief on the timeline. So, you know, we go to where there was some slight natural compositions, some genetic freaks. You go back to the 60s, 70s, whatever. You know, you go into the 80s and 90s, really when things were getting big with the golden era, you know, 70s, 80s, 90s, big with the golden era of bodybuilding. Really pushing out of the 60s, but, you know, then we get the video, the pumping iron and all that stuff, bodybuilding gets big and whatever. And everybody wants to be bigger, better, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And nothing, you know, I don't trying to say this in the most respectful manner. You know, I've known a lot of bodybuilders that have cycled, and after they retire, they always look back and say, you know, I wish I would have never did that.
Sure.
There's been a lot that come out. Neither here nor there, there's been a dramatic shift of bodybuilding in an aesthetically pleasing manner. You know, even with Arnold, but, you know, looking at the body as a piece of art. And building your muscle around that, showing there were so many bodybuilders that were all great, but they all had something different about them.
Sure.
Like,
arms, chest,
something
back.
like the way they were put together was just so unique. It's like, well, what do you want to look at?
Because it's so subjective, right?
It is a highly subjective sport. Now as you grow in, 90s, 2000s, things are getting bigger, better. They're adding more divisions. You know, classic physique comes along, and some other women categories as well, and they're trying to really establish and distinguish, like, how do we judge these categories?
How do you judge the lighting? How do you look at the movements that they're doing?
Everything.
Yeah.
You know, what are we looking for as far as symmetry and stuff? Now when we get into where you go back to social media, right?
Yeah.
We're at the peak of social media.
Yeah.
We're at the peak
Right.
so there has been, for me at least, watching it. Now, mind you, even though I haven't been about me, I've been around these folks for years. I mean, I've seen it, and just to see the progression, even over the last, I would say, over the last just 5 years, there's been a strong dynamic shift, even with bikini, right?
Yep.
Bikini is a division. You're still wanting symmetry. You're still wanting good shape. They got to look athletic. But there's been even a shift of, like, some of these bikini girls, and they're not supposed to be, like, big and muscular, right? But some of these bikini girls now, they're becoming bigger, more leg, more glute, more this.
Still super lean, but like.
Lean. And then that's the other thing, is that they used to have softer looks, and now they're becoming more shredded and stuff like that. Having cross striations. If they whittle.
So is that becoming more pronounced and accepted? Is that where it's shifting?
It is. There's a lot of shift with that. People are trying to bring it back. Men's physique, the Beach Boy look.
Yep.
I don't want to.
That's the board shorts, right?
Board shorts.
Yep.
They're becoming bigger. These guys are looking like they should be doing bodybuilding and monsters, which is good. They still got some great tapers. Classic physique is another one that's supposed to be classic bodybuilding. Or classic bodybuilding. We do classic poses. You still want to see some muscularity, but if you ideally look at the golden area of bodybuilding, that's that category.
Yes,
that's C-Bomb. He's in that category. And then you have the guys that have muscle on top of muscle on top of muscle, the dense muscle. That's just the bodybuilding category. And those guys, since, you could say it was, maybe Yates, Labrada, maybe Ronnie Coleman.
Yeah.
Where
just the
we call them mass junkies. Right? And so when you have that stemming from it, and all it takes is a few years to progress past that point, now you got a bunch of people, including on social media, that are posting this. And on social media, all you see is the good. No one sees the good, bad, and
no one sees the bad and the ugly.
They don't see your off season. Some people do.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they don't see you. You see the stage shot. You think this person is this big and this lean throughout the year, and that is pressing people, and they're pushing people, and even trying to do things to say, like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes until I achieve this physique. And the problem is, I go back to the original statement I was saying. It is bodybuilding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it takes time. And what scares me, I'll be frank, is that the younger generation, the high schoolers going into their young 20s, and
already using SARMs.
They're riding this wave and not realizing that a lot of these guys that are seeing in Olympia or on the world stages and stuff like that, they've been bodybuilding for like 10, 15 years. That's the after effect.
Yeah, that's not a 2-year trip.
That's not a 2-year trip.
Yes, that's a wow.
Steroids are not.
And again, and we always like to point this out. I'm not knocking nobody that does steroids. You know, regardless of what anybody thinks, it's not a shortcut. You still got to do the work.
Right, and that's why I said. I was like, it's not whether you do it or not. And I was like, you know, whether you're natural or not, I don't really care. I want you to do it sustainably.
Absolutely.
That's
Long
the
term.
biggest thing, and that's the shift we're seeing in bodybuilding is that, and I see that shift with just everybody. Everybody wants immediate results and instant gratification.
Well, hence comes the Ozempics and the easy button. I want to lose weight, easy button.
We're Americans, just give me a pill. I want to be able to do this overnight. You know?
And so I've coached a few folks even on and off, on cycle or on cycle. And the one thing I love even in those situations is like, how do we make sure you're going to sustain yourself through this period and after you're done and for the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah.
You know, and in grain, it's always, you guys understand, it's about the little things. But either way, back to the question. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to digress.
No, absolutely.
But bodybuilding has become bigger, more pronounced. It is creating the look.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
there is an aesthetic, a look to it.
There's a lot of people that crave it but don't want to do the show, as well. And I still to this day think it's a sport that's way misunderstood or.
Well, big meatheads, male or female, like you just
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And I mean, even in this, however long we've been on this right now, we could clearly see you're not dumb. Very well educated.
Yep.
Very well spoken. So I mean, I think that is the connotation that comes with bodybuilding.
It
just
is.
Big dummies lifting heavy weights.
And you mentioned it though, and when you're talking about social media, right? Like, it's far too often you see the end result, right?
Yeah.
Or you see someone bench pressing 405, 315, or they're squatting this or squatting that, right? And I follow you on social media, so I see when you're trying to dial it back, and you mentioned it in off season, so watching you actually post some of the squats, some of the rows, some of the benches, right? Are you moving the most weight? Absolutely not. But are you dialing your form back? And then you're having an interaction with people that are commenting on that video, and they're getting to see you not necessarily at your best, right? Whereas
Seeing the flaws.
in the social media world that we're living, a lot of the younger generation that people are looking up to, they're seeing them at their absolute best. They're not seeing them trying to put in the work and make the change, right? So, and maybe that's a good slide into our next question is, you had just mentioned this younger generation, these high schoolers, right? So you have your personal business, repping it here on the shirt. Make sure you take a look, folks. How are you trying to guide people to have more of the mindset like, hey, it's the longevity. Let's do this right. Yeah, I want to see you succeed. I want to see you, surpass me potentially. But how are you trying?
And how do you do that to an 18-year-old?
18-year-old that's got more testosterone in the body that would kill me, right? So, like, how are you facing that challenge today?
I face it all the time, and not even just with younger generation, but the younger generation. A lot of times, and I say it because it's easy for me to say it because I was there myself.
Mm-hmm.
I get, and
you lived it.
That cliche phrase of like, man, if I knew what I knew then, I don't, And
we're all dudes. We've all been impervious when we were 18. I can't be hurt.
And I've cautioned some folks and this goes through knowledge of, when you're younger, you're going through like that neurological adaptation, and you got that musculoskeletal adaptation, as you progress and your testosterone starts shifting, but your body and your endocrine response are shifting with it. There's so many dynamics that are flowing from when you're 18 to when you're hitting 30 plus,
Shit me old.
I know, right. That's what's sad. It's
I'm 39 in 2 months, so.
So my first thing with them is I always look at, if it's in the gym, and I talk to some of them where I'm just like, focus on your form, slow it down, focus on the form, focus on your lift, intentional with the rep, not the set. That rep in form with intensity should look like the next one, should look like the next one, and
last should look like the first.
And if you feel like your body's losing it, it's okay to just take a pause and take a step back. Now, when I go into the other things that they ask me about, like, well, you know, like, what are you eating there? Like, what? It's just like, I think I'm gonna do a bulk, or I'm gonna do a mini cut, or something like that. And I'm just like, okay, well, once again, like, what's sustainable?
Mm-hmm.
And I go back to that conversation for you. I was like, your body compared to mine is a furnace. I was like, and already, you probably have enough of what you're doing. You got, or do you know how much of a responder are you? Are you a slow responder? Are you a fast responder? Typically fast for younger 18, right? But I was like, if you're even at a maintenance right now, you're gonna build.
Yeah.
Like, so
you got pump the brakes.
Pump the brakes. You don't need a whole bunch of bulking.
Yeah.
To do that. And then the next conversation, and I sometimes even mention studies. I was just like, but like, dude, you're like your sleep. I was like, longevity wise, like I know you're ripping and running, and 5-6 hours of sleep, you're good as a kid, whatever.
Sleep when I'm dead.
And then sleep when I'm dead. But I'm just like, hey, set the tone now, because you're only gonna need more when you get further down the road. And that's the same thing with mobility.
But I think that's a great message too, though, because if you look across the board at these young cats, you know, these Demi Bagby and all these people like, oh, team no sleep. I sleep 2 hours. It's like, bro, that might seem cool now, but
yeah, there was some recent study where it was like, even I think it was like a 30 to an hour difference of like between like 7 and 8 hours, or 6 and 7 or something like that, increased your susceptibility to injury and whatever. Like 2-3 fold or something. I'm probably misquoting it, but it was not.
Yeah, I mean, like, sleep is like, your shutdown. Like, that's the recovery cycle.
It's literally one of the easiest things you can do.
Yeah. But that was the biggest thing, was just pulling their intensive mind. Now, I see a lot of the kids, especially if they're athletic kids in high school, like they're going through a lot of explosive movements, which I get it. But my point is, do it and do it well. And if you're going to do that, start your mobility now, because it will catch up.
The more time you have on this earth, the more movement you have.
There's a natural mobility progression.
Yeah.
Right? So, but then we go into the topic of what you're putting in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to, you know, I got some folks on the natural side that will shun you if you put anything in your body. And I've never personally been a fan of that. Everybody has their own opinions. Everybody has their own things that they want to do.
Everybody's got their own journey.
They got their own journey. And like I said, I coach people on and I coach people off.
Yeah.
You know, they're treated exactly the same as how we're going to sustain your life. Now, when I get to the younger generation, and they're seeing people, you know, in their mid-20s, mid-30s, even 40s, and they're using, but they've had their body under the barbell adapt to it, and then they get on and see the fruit after the fact. They're trying to do that right now. Their body hasn't even matured.
Right.
And you know, that to me, that goes into even trying to cut down with the fat burners and the diuretics and all that. Your body hasn't matured. First of all, that's not even meant for that. Like, I mean, diuretics is more so even predominantly used in the medical hospitals and stuff. We get it over the counter because they want to make money. That's my personal opinion, but you put it in
You're
yourself,
absolutely right, though.
You know, but you know, it is what it is, because if I drink more water, I piss more anyway. So, I mean,
I focused on your electrolytes and whatever.
So, you know, I had to tell, you know, some of those, you know, at least from my opinion, it's just like, to pump the brakes. Once again, I know it sucks. It really does. But it's going to take time.
Yeah.
And do you want to end everything from even a hormonal response by the time you're 35 and you are going to be on this earth? You're going to be on this earth 45 years after that.
God willing, man.
God willing. Maybe let's shorten it. Another 30 years after you hit that 30-year life cycle.
Yeah.
So now you got to battle with all the after effects because you didn't wait for your body to mature and then go into that second.
And speaking of hormones in that pattern as well, you know, we already have a problem, let's say, in males in this country, in the upper 20s to lower 30s of lowering testosterone levels. And I've been very honest with this. I've been on TRT for 4 years now, going on 5. And, my body already wasn't making it. I was at the lowest point you could get to, and that's exercising 4 to 5 times a week, eating clean, doing all things. My body just said no.
Right.
And that's the difference between, therapeutic and when we talk about steroids. We're talking 200 to 500, 1,000, these crazy numbers that just wreck your testosterone levels.
And that's completely exactly the point. Like I said, I want to see people healthy. I know they're going to sustain it. I know males will have a drop naturally regardless. I know you're on fire testosterone wise when you're in, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. And, if you're 4 to the 1 and your test levels already, why do you need to be higher?
Yeah.
And if anything, there's been things that are saying you put something in your body actually will have an adverse
It'll have the shift,
effect.
right? Yeah, these test boosters.
Yeah, and I'm like, and so I told a couple of guys, quite a few guys. I don't want to say a couple. There's been quite a few guys where I'm just like, I'm looking at you right now, and I know I see the growth out of you. Give yourself at least 3, 4, 5 more years.
Yeah.
See what your body does, and then go. Oh, you're telling me I can go? I was like, I'm telling you, you can do whatever you want at that point. Just let your body
adapt. And I think you're looking at it like I look at it with the Gen Pop client.
Yeah.
Like if I'm looking at a dude and he's telling me he's tired in the afternoon and this is that, I'm like, man, go get some metabolic testing done. See where you at. Like, I have a client that's 10 years younger than me, and dude goes in, and when I started at 34-ish on this, I was at like 380, bottom of the scale. He was at like 200.
Yeah.
He's 10 years younger than me. And I'm like, bro, that might be your problem.
Yeah.
You can't turn on that androgen receptor, like nothing's firing.
And then that's therapy. That at that point in time is therapeutic.
Therapeutic. And I think, these young cats, they get into this mindset of the SARMs and all this stuff they don't really need. It's like, dude, you're already kicking out as much stuff to really get you building good muscle than you're ever going to put out. You don't need it. It's the barreling the hard work. You got to work for it. There's no easy button.
Yeah.
You're not going to get there faster.
Yeah.
When you see dudes that have taken 15 years to get to their spot where they're winning and doing these things at the Olympia, they didn't decide last year, like, yeah, man, I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna take that W and then just go for it. No, man, they're like,
it was a journey.
Years. It was a journey.
But people want that instant gratification, and we've talked about this. I fell into that trap, right?
I think we all have at some point.
Yeah, and like for me, and it's the one thing that I wish people, and I mentioned this in the last episode, I wish people would take away from this, especially the younger generation of lifters, is that I ended up with 2 significant injuries because, the first one, before I met anybody that would actually show me how to lift, I was just Googling YouTube and whatever, and I can still remember, my best bench press was 410 pounds, right? Now, if you would have saw me bench press 225 after my first surgery, which you did, my form was not great, right? I was used to being a bigger guy and bouncing off my chest. And when you just said, let your body do something for 3 or 5 years, right? But your message, let's dial back to that form. Let's look at the technique. Let's look at the intensity. That speaks volumes to me. And I wish people would take that advice more often than they do, because it led me down a path where, when we were walking out on the treadmill, I told you I was in a really deep, dark spot because mentally I couldn't do anything, So how do you see that shift happening with this younger generation, and even people that aren't younger generation?
Because it's not a race.
Yeah.
I the one thing I will give credit to the younger generation, actually, there's a flip side of a positive. Things are heavily promoted, and they can see some good things. They can see that people are taking care of their body. They're being really cognizant of it. They're, back to the point where I might not have known how to do a lift properly, whatever. They can start seeing these things on social media too. Yeah. So they're good advantage. And I do see quite a few people focusing and honing in on that, or watching something on TikTok just to get it down. So there is advantage there. but I mean, still in the same, there's still that mentality of push through.
Mm-hmm. No pain, no gain.
And I mean, you've known this of me. I mean, even the first few years of bodybuilding, it was like good for like it was like clockwork. It was like good for like 4 months. All of a sudden, I had some injury that it might not have been major or it might have been major, but it took me out. Muscle pull, the knee, shoulder, something, and I got to the point where I was just like, this can't be bodybuilding. Like I can't do this.
It's not sustainable.
It's not exactly. It's not sustainable. And so it was at that point where I started questioning. I was like, am I gonna be? I don't know if I want to do this.
Yeah.
But you know, the stubborn side of me was like, no, we're gonna do this.
Just gonna push through it.
We're gonna push through it. And then the side that continued was like, but we're gonna figure out a better way to do this. And grabbing at other mentors, continuing my education through it, that's when I started really shutting out the noise.
Okay.
And just kind of like
flipping the switch.
And I was really I take squats. For instance. Chad and I used to be in. I could mash out on squats. I would squat, but I would always get to a point where I injure myself. Or something was off, or my hip was off, or my knee was off, or something would happen. I'm just using squats as an example. And there was a period about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's been about 5 years now. Wow. Yeah, it's about 5 years ago. Where I said, I actually told Chad, I was just like, I'm trying to do everything else sustainable. And this I can't. I want to make sure I can keep this progression. And I said, I need to dial it back. Chad was like, yeah, you do. And so, and it was funny because I was preaching that to other people. I wasn't taking the advice myself.
Yeah.
And so I dialed it back to where it felt weird. I wasn't even majorly injured at the time, where I was at only a plate or two of squats for the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
Then I added 10. After like 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Then I added 25. Then I added another plate. And then I stayed right there. Then I'll add a little bit. You know, 3, 4, 5 years later, I'm repping 4 plates.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not 2, 3, 4. I'm like 6, 8, 10 reps, sets of 4s, like, you know, and feeling easy with it.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling smooth with it, feeling strong, seeing my progression on my leg. That's the other thing too about dialing back and then pushing forward. Sometimes I tell folks, it's like, what's the longest distance you're going to be able to jump? Is it standing in one place, or sometimes taking a running start, stepping back, and then going? And I had
Great analogy, actually.
And I had to do that. And I saw growth because of it. I saw dialing back created more growth, even though I was still intense in the gym. Don't get me wrong. I would push some weight.
Intentional, right?
I was intentional with the weight. But that was a big thing for me. And even recently, I felt myself shifting again.
Yeah.
And I said,
And I just kind of want to tip on that real quick.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about this several times. I mean, we send videos to each other all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, man, look at this lift. What do you see, right? Because sometimes you need different eyes on it because you're not going to see it. And I think that's the thing. Like, you say, yeah, well, I dialed it back 5 years ago and I built it up. But I want you to speak to this because I know this because we've had these conversations. But that's not to say you didn't have tweaks in between there. No major injuries, no major missteps, but things like...
It was a tweak every single step of the way.
Like, man, my ankle feels weird. Chad, what does this look like? Hey, Brandon, man, look at this lift real quick, man. Am I leaning somewhere? I feel off, right? Even though we build back up, that's not to say we don't still conditionally throughout that time bring it down to figure out what those tweaks are.
No, that's actually extremely good point because even though, and because like I said, I live in a sport where intensity is the name of the game.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's even more necessary for me to, as I go throughout whatever cycle I'm on, even if it's at the end of a macro cycle where I have to go back and I'm looking at myself, and I'm to the point where every lift I do now, I'm looking at.
Yeah,
literally, like, you know, and I do, like, to your point is, you know, there every single time I'm so in tune, and that's why I want even the younger generation to get in tune with your body.
Physical awareness.
Know your body. Be aware of your body. Be aware of what is, you know, if and some people are promoting this on social media too, because I actually like it. It's like, if you're not feeling your glute firing, but you're doing the lift that's supposed to make your glute fire, something's not right.
So
why are you going to continue to do it for the next 4 or 5 months, thinking that it's magically going to trigger?
And continuing to add weight.
And to continue to add weight to it. If you are pulling on your lats, or you're doing rear delts, but your scaps are winging, or you're not really feeling what the, okay, that means something's wrong.
It becomes the proverbial needle in the haystack.
Yeah, and so to your point, even with the squats, you know, when I was feeling some shifts, even though I was like, I still feel strong, like I still feel like I'm getting it, but something's shifting. The more and more I went down that path, is the shorter and shorter I had a response to it. Like I was like, oh no, we going, because I there would even be like, I had like 4 or 5 good days, weeks in a row, and I had one squat day and I felt good, and I was like, it was like the first rep on the working set, and I was just like, rack. I was like, that ain't look right. I sent him a video. I was like, hey, watch this. What is going on here? You know, like,
he called me actually. He called me and he was like, hey man, I sent you a video. I said, of what?
And you haven't responded yet. Let's go.
Yeah. I said, dick pics in the afternoon? What are we doing? Like, I don't want to do that. But no, he sent me the video, and literally on the phone, I'm watching, and we're going, okay, what's happening? Because again, sometimes,
because I'm looking at myself, and sometimes I critique myself because I critique other people.
Yeah.
He critiques me. That's the beauty of, especially if you go with people that are knowledgeable. It's like, you have to be aware of when it's, back to the point, when it's time to push through, or when it's probably time to, like, let's fix this right now. Because to your point, if I just keep adding weight,
something's going to break.
And I've done that, where I was like, you know, 405 on squats felt good. Good. It started to feel a little worse. A little bit worse, but I kept doing it.
Weight was still moving.
And then all of a sudden, it was just like, no, this isn't working at all now. So,
and I heard you. I've had the opposite. I've sent you videos, and you be like, what the hell are you talking about? That looks great. And I'm like, no, man, but you don't see the left side shifting and my foot moving. Stop, man. You're doing too much. Stop.
Yeah, there is that point too, you know, and over analyzing. I know we can that's our job though. But and I know I've overanalyzed myself too. It's just like, because you've done the same thing to me, where it's like, no, that actually looks okay. I was like, okay, we're gonna keep, and I felt fine actually, but you know, it's just
there was something in the back of your head.
Something in my back of my head. I'm just like, listen, man. Then back to the point of longevity and bodybuilding. If I have to sustain intensity, because I have to keep growing. I have to. There's people hunting for my head. I'm hunting for some other guy's head right now.
Yeah.
And they're doing the same thing.
I mean, it's a competitive sport. It's a battle.
And I'm not quitting anytime soon. So my point is, it's like, you know, if I can't maintain my body, you know, when it's all said and done, then was it really worth it? It's like, yeah, okay, I got my trophies, whatever. But, you know, once again, I want to be able to, in a sense, just coast on out of bodybuilding when I retire and just be like, hey, this is me.
Just be like, I'm cool. This is what I'm doing for the rest of the time.
Like, you know, and, you know, so,
you know, as we get to the end here too, you know, I don't want it to feel like we dogging on the young cats, right? Because I don't think that's what we're doing at all. I think there are some, you know, some young guys out there, some young girls out there that do need some direction in this. But I will say, I also find that the old cats have a real hard time because they've been fed the wrong message for so much longer, 40, 50, 60 years of bad fitness advice. Whereas these young cats, they don't have that precursor, right?
No, man.
So when somebody says, hey, man, we're going to fix this, and they go, oh, well, Teach me, man. What are we doing?
It's instant though. They can look it up on their phone. They can, whether it's DMing you, contacting another coach, whoever it is, they have instant access, right? So I agree. We're not just sitting here dogging on the young folks, right? Because a lot of them are doing things the way they should, right? But they have the ability to because they have the access.
They have the access. Absolutely.
Yeah, everything's at the palm of your hands right now. But that is you go back to I don't mean to go back to that question, but the shift in bodybuilding.
Mm-hmm.
I won't say a shift, there's a divide. And the divide is the old school.
The old heads.
Even if they're younger, even in their 20s, 30s, they might have been trained up or mentored or coached.
It's just on the pumping iron.
By the old head that was, you got to do this and eat just chicken and rice and spinach every day, and then you got to switch to tilapia and rice, and then tilapia and potatoes, and you can't do and don't have any sodium and kill all your water. And
wait, what?
And then there's people.
I love it when you do that though.
There's people that are still doing. So the divide is the old mentality and the new healthy mentality.
The shift.
Like the shift of take longer on prep or grind it out and try to get whatever I can within this time frame. There's a divide with that.
Where do you fall at?
Oh, I'm always about my comment, and there's some other coaches in the network and other people that feel the same way. We talked about sustainability. I'm always about let your body tell you when you're ready for a show, not the show to tell you when your body's ready.
I was going to say he's doing donuts in the middle, but I mean, sure, that's one direction, No, that's great advice, though. I feel like that's a good precursor to a lot of things, though, even in just Gen Pop. I mean, don't let the thing you're going to do tell you when you're ready to do something. Yeah. It can't be that way.
It's cliche to say, right? Fall in love with the process, not the outcome. You're so stuck on the outcome, but you're missing the journey. That's the point of joy. Is having faith in what you're doing, but hoping for the outcome that's to come. That's what builds the process. If you're not gonna fall in love with the process and do little things, you're never gonna achieve what you're looking at.
That's getting fit for a vacation, then the vacation's over, and then what do you do?
Go back to whatever.
Right. So exactly. So I'm really not for that. I'm big on for bodybuilding. Yes, we're a different breed. We have to do a little bit more intensity, a little bit more grinding out, a little bit more detailed work than general pop. But at the end of the day, that's the vibe where I fit in is, hey, I want athletes to be healthy. I want them to take more time if they need it.
Because at some point you're going to be back to Gen Pop.
Yeah.
You're not going to be a competitor forever.
No, exactly. And have those those building blocks, that foundation there, so you can still say, look, I did bodybuilding, I crushed it, and I'm still doing well in life.
Yeah, still moving great.
I'm still moving great.
I still play with my kids, my grandkids, my whatever.
Yeah, and
we got daughters, we ain't having grandkids.
So I am, I know.
You having all the grandkids, both of y'all.
I ain't ever dating, man.
Look, man. You already got cursed with daughters immediately, so that immediately means you up.
That's the reason I'm working out, Brandon.
I know, right? So
I told y'all I'm gonna be the Will Smith uncle in the back of the.
No, that's the reason. Man, I said the same thing. That's the reason why I work out. I just so happen to do bodybuilding shows.
Wait, why y'all think I got all these tattoos for?
It's crazy. We've been talking for coming up close an hour now, and we didn't tell him anything we were going to talk about.
No.
We kind of just said, hey, we want to bring Brandon on. We dropped it in the last episode because we wanted to talk about bodybuilding and whatnot and just see what
And I got a little worried about that because I wasn't sure about his schedule. So I name dropped immediately. Like, yeah, Brandon going to come on. And I'm like, shit, I didn't call Brandon and tell him he was going to be on.
We had to pull through no matter what, but we greatly appreciate you. But the message, and wasn't trying to trip you up at all whatsoever, but if you go back and you listen to this episode, the message has been consistent from you, right? You didn't mince words. You didn't say
flip flop.
Yeah. So that is, once again, I'm gonna say it again, refreshing, right? Because we live in social media, and I love looking at all the different people that are coming up and doing whatever they're doing to be, the best versions of themselves. And it's nice to hear you say, I want people to be healthy athletes. I want to continue that because we've talked. You got 3 kids. You want to be able to move when this is all said and done, right?
And you know what? I think we could continue this conversation for much, much longer than this. And,
yeah.
you know, this is not the last time we're going to have you on by any means. But, you know, I see it as, and, you know, this is, you know, I've been in the game as a weightlifter for, you know, let's say a gen pop bodybuilder, because I'm not a competitor, you know, for 15 to 17 years. I've been a trainer for 10 of those years, you know, with my education and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, as a kindred spirit, you know, I think you're the best in the game. And being like totally for real, if I have anybody come to me that's like, yo, I'm trying to bodybuild, I'm like, I could train you, but I got a guy that's better. Like he's gonna dial you in. He's got what you need. And I think that speaks volumes to your character. And I think it speaks volumes to the dedication that you put into it. Because we can all sit here and go, yes, winning the Olympia is not a credential, right? But the amount of time, because again, you prefaced it at the beginning of this show, you have a corporate job, you have a full-time job that you have to, you know, also attest to, but you're still reading the studies and doing the certifications and doing the outside work. And I just think that that's a credit to the sport of bodybuilding going forward, because I know you do work with a lot of youth, but I also know you work low-key with a lot of older clients as well. And I've seen some of them. You sent me some videos to look at some form stuff to, you know, make sure we were thinking the same thing. And I think that right there, because it's such a broad spectrum of people that are coming to you to compete in this sport, I think that speaks to how big the sport's gotten right there and how much you've put into the sport and dedicated to the sport.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that, both of you guys.
So, Brandon, thank you for being on the show. I'm going to have you on again. Brandon's, we had to rush to get him on the show because he's actually headed to do some mission work in India here at the end of the week. So, Brandon, I want to thank you for being on the show. Jeff, I want to thank you as always for co-hosting with me here. We are going to put some QC Iron links at the bottom of the show so you guys know where to find Brandon. And if you have any questions about bodybuilding or even general population, nutrition, this guy's your guy. I promise you he will steer you in the right direction. I wouldn't tell you otherwise. With that being said, guys, you know the number one rule of this gym: just don't die.
Just don't suck.
Thanks, guys.